You are going to have two types of body paragraphs. You're going to have paragraphs that focus on the audience assumptions, and you're going to have paragraphs that focus on the rhetorical strategies the author uses. Remember, rhetorical strategies are not ethos, pathos, and logos. They're things like exemplification, cause and effect, compare and contrast. The appeals, ethos, pathos, and logos, are the audience's responses. In fact, the author probably considered how they wanted the audience to respond. This video is going to focus on audience assumptions. I actually have 3 paragraphs on audience assumptions in my sample E. Shelley Reid essay. Why? Because her essay is focused on audience assumptions. Many of you said it was like she was having a conversation with me, like she knew what I was thinking. She understood me. That's audience assumptions. And by doing these paragraphs first, it allows me to refer back to those ideas as I analyze my rhetorical strategies because I'm laying a foundation for it. Now, how do you write audience assumption paragraphs? You start with a topic sentence that provides direction for what you're going to do in that paragraph. You develop that with text. You provide analysis that shows how the appeals connect to the audience and make the argument persuasive. And then every paragraph ends with a summary sentence that stresses your main point. Things to ask in expanding your analysis. How does this work? Why does this work? So what? Why does this matter that this assumption is there? And how do you know? It's got to be based in the text. Here is my first paragraph. And you'll see me going back with colors again. I want you to see. I want you to see how I'm making my moves. One of the strengths of Reid's writing is her appeal to the underlying assumptions of her primary audience, first-year college students. By appealing to these audience beliefs, Reid shows her readers she understands them and therefore helps them feel comfortable with her. So I'm making a claim about what she's doing. I haven't really named any audience assumptions yet, but I'm setting up what I'm going to do. Now I'm going to name them. First, she assumes that her audience believes writing is difficult. And so she opens her paper with the blunt statement, writing is hard. You could argue that this is a rhetorical strategy, and if you did, I would agree with you. I've called it an assumption in my essay. It's functioning both ways. Her readers, and now once I've got this out there, she assumes her audience believes writing is difficult. She appeals to them by stating, writing is hard. Now I've got to analyze it. I can't just leave it at that. I need that analysis. Her readers may be surprised to see this in a college textbook. After all, most textbook writers are not so blunt and do not acknowledge the challenges of learning. This single sentence forms an entire paragraph, which may also surprise students since most of them have been taught that paragraphs should be at least 5 to 8 sentences long. The shocking brevity of the paragraph, as well as the content of the sentence, capture Reid's audience's attention and makes them think and reflect on their own experience with writing. No matter how they've done in writing classes previously, writing is difficult for most people. I'm naming that audience assumption, giving an example of how I know that, and I'm talking about how the appeal to that audience assumption will work for the audience. Audience assumption number 2. You'll notice I've got the topic sentence, and then I have an example, then I have analysis. Reed follows up by appealing to another assumption many of her readers have, that teachers have figured out how to do things and no longer struggle. She wants her audience to know that she understands them, and so in a short paragraph after her blunt statement, she adds, I'm a writer and a writing professor and the daughter and granddaughter of writers and writing professors, and I still sit down on my keyboard every week and think writing is hard. Her confession makes her seem human. Her honesty makes her seem approachable. And so by showing that although she's been successful, she still struggles, she makes herself seem approachable and makes them more likely to listen. So she's assuming they believe this, and she's responding to that to sort of get them on her side. In fact, that's what an underlying assumption does. By referring to things that the author assumes her audience believes, she gets them on her side. One more. This one could also seem like a rhetorical strategy, maybe exemplification, but it's also an underlying assumption. So I'm going to call it an underlying assumption because I can. You could argue that it's not, but we'll go with that. She appeals to a third underlying assumption that her first year students have been taught absolute rules of writing and that these rules are overwhelming. She asserts writing is made harder than it has to be when we try to follow too many rules for writing. She names some of those rules. These are the examples that I referenced before. Always have a thesis, I before E, except after C, no one sentence paragraphs, use concrete nouns, don't use I, check your spelling, make 3 main points, don't repeat yourself. She assumes her readers are familiar with these points and that they have heard even more rules than these, and she concludes, it's no wonder we get writer's block. Whether you're writing about underlying assumptions or you're writing about rhetorical strategies, you have to talk about the audience. This is your analysis. Many readers will see themselves in these descriptions, and so by appealing to their experiences and their beliefs, Reed demonstrates she understands and shares the experiences of her audience. This makes her seem more trustworthy and may also make them curious about what she has to offer instead of the list of rules they're already familiar with. Reed continues to appeal to these underlying assumptions as she uses rhetorical strategies to help her readers see that focusing on a few key principles will help them overcome the thousands of rules they've been taught. That's the reason why I kept it as an assumption. But if you told me, it's an assumption and a strategy, I would maybe listen to you. All right, this video is also over.